Good, good. A bit of a long day. What's up?
Yeah, well, so you're coaching things in Oz Fortress Discord and thought,
They were super
yeah, just
epic.
to hear your theories about like aiming and
Yeah.
like the ideal mouse and so on.
Okay. Well, it's a bit of a broad topic, like mice and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Did you have anything you wanted to start off with? I'm probably not the best person to talk about like specific mice and brands and stuff. I know what I like in a mouse, pardon me, but
Yeah, sure. Well, on your stream you use, it says you use an FK, right?
yes, I have an
Sorry,
FK2 currently.
and Artisan. So why do you use that mouse and mousepad?
Well, I've always liked the Zowies because they're extremely simple and relatively cheap, and I think there's something good about like simplistic mice in the sense that they seem more reliable and less likely to break down and shit. I find that the more complicated, I would say convoluted mice tend to fuck up a bit more and die. It's yeah. In regards to the mouse pad, it's just I think it's that brand in particular is probably one of the best in terms of just like its consistency and its quality and endurance and stuff.
Do you find Artisan pads last longer?
Yes, they certainly do. Not just because of they're a much better build quality, but they also have like better technologies, like the braided edges and stuff. It's really well done.
So like, you know how like after a while a pad will feel like a bit sludgy in the middle? Like
it's called swamp or mud pad. And
so
that's due to not only your mouse pad potentially getting dirty, but also like the fiber
physical,
getting worn out, or the spongy foam underneath becoming like what would you call it? Just caved in, like collapsed over time.
So do Artisan pads like? Does that happen?
It happens far less than a cheaper pad. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
But I was fortunate because I got this pad second hand off a friend for a lot cheaper than usual.
Any particular reasons on the FK series though? Like, do you like the shape of it? Or
well, I think
like
if you've noticed, you look at all the really like popular mouse brands at the moment, and they've pretty much all copied the FK2 shell.
Yes.
That's the thing that Zowie does best. I probably need to update my mouse because it's a little behind in terms of technology.
Yeah, the Model O is apparently like an upgrade in every way.
Well, I did have a Model O fairly recently, but it died on me, and I think it's because of poorer build quality. Like the clicker's literally broke and stuff. It's
how soon after release did you get it? Because apparently, like when
very
it first
soon.
came out.
No. I had the updated version.
Okay, sure.
But it's still like the side buttons broke on me, and also the clickers died.
Okay.
And I think that's like a sacrifice that often is going to come with a super light mouse, is they try and shave off as much weight as possible, and that means they kind of compromise on the structural quality of a lot of components.
Sure. Okay.
I've yet to find like I'm not super into mice, as I said, but I've yet to find a really good compromise. I'd talk more to Sam about this sort of shit, to be honest. Like in terms of like what are the best mice to build, but I think the most important thing, because all the sensors in mice are pretty much fantastic these days and universally like acceptable for the most part, so the only things that really matter in my opinion are the weight, which I think the lighter the better for most of the time. Having a good cord that's like flexible, and then it's a matter of preference, like shell shape.
Sure.
The other major thing I would say is like the actuation force and the actuation force of the primary clicks and the distance. You want those to be as low as possible.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, I agree on those things. Okay.
I would talk to Samuel, or who's some other fucking cunts. Maybe Doggerel.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've spoken to Sam about it a little bit.
He's a big nerd.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably the more important thing that you can do right now that like benefits your mouse is like optimizing your computer and your mouse registry settings and all that sort of shit. That's really helpful. Like making sure like your Windows settings are tuned properly for your mouse and raw input, that sort of stuff.
Okay. I remember I did some tweaks with a friend to reduce latency on the computer itself.
Yeah, that shit's very extensive. You can do like more. I don't know if you've done the like killing acceleration in your mouse.
Yeah, I remember like I had like some custom settings on the mouse I was using at the time, and then like using the adding the mouse fixes or whatever like messed
Mark
up.
C.
No, I had a cooler master mouse, and there was like an angle tunability setting. So like, you know how
Is that within the software?
Yeah, within the mouse software, and I just got rid of it. So
this is worth testing. Like, you can do this pretty soon. If you look up a website called Mark C mouse acceleration fix, there's a program that you can. It comes as a collective of the stuff you download that can check if you have like improper mouse acceleration and stuff.
Okay.
Because I don't know much about the software you have, but I think it's important to like check it. So I can guide you through it if you want.
Okay. No, that's okay. I've got a friend who's like super into these things as well. No, not right now.
System stuff for your mouse.
Nah.
Alright.
I'm kind of more curious about what any aim theories you have about like what to focus on when.
Yeah. Well, shall we jump into a server or something? I'm more of a visual learner.
A quick fight?
You can, or we can go MG or something on the private server if you like.
On Dogs in Space?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
You know, I'm not the. You wanted to play Scout, right? Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, my Scout aim's not excellent. It's not bad. But I think there are these universal principles that you can kind of apply to like any sort of aim related thing in any sort of game.
Okay.
I should get a sense of like what you're working with. Like, what's your sensitivity?
For Scout, it's 1.4 at 800 at the moment.
What does that equate to? Do you know?
About 37 centimeters.
That's pretty fucking close to mine. So it's a relatively low even for Scout sort of thing. I don't think it's particularly complicated when it comes to aiming. Like improving your aim. It's just that it's challenging to do it properly because most people just don't put in the effort to actually get good at it, and there's no like secret recipe that people aren't aware of. The truth is, it just requires a lot of practice and, more importantly, a tremendous amount of focus.
Sure.
The key thing when you want to be practicing, I think, anything in life is that you make the practicing itself the highest quality possible.
Yeah. Sure.
And that's a matter of minimizing you know, internal and external factors that kind of might conflict, or you know, things like being tired or stressed or hungry or like that sort of thing. Make sure you want to like minimize that sort of thing, and conversely optimize things that are going to like make you better. I don't know, such as hydration and sleep and stuff. So that I know that's kind of getting into the more hippie side of it, but I think it's really important for like
very biological.
Yeah, it really is. But it's really important because like your improvement does not really come while you're playing. It comes when you're sleeping, and those like neurological circuits form and stuff, and however that sort of stuff works. So it makes perfect sense that you have bad quality training in terms of like the sort of condition that you're playing in or practicing in. It makes sense that if that's poor quality, it's likely to manifest in like poorer retention or translation or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's important to have good sleep and stuff for that reason too.
Yeah.
So that's the first major thing I'd make sure you're doing, is making sure you're getting really good quality training time. You're optimizing those sorts of things. The second thing is to be like completely focused. That you could say that plays into the first part as well. It's like you want to be like very dedicated and like alert and hyper focused on what you're doing. When people play MG or any sort of training, I think it's mainly like a casual thing for most players. Like you want to be focusing very hard on what you're doing, and that doesn't mean like, you know, fucking tensing all up and, you know, gripping your mouse like it's your dick or something, but you just want to be like really hyper focused on what you're doing. I think that's really important if you want to improve quickly.
Sure.
So we can play if you want, but I don't know if that's what you want to do.
No, that's okay. I'm just more curious about your thoughts about things.
Yeah, like I talked to Sam about. You can talk to him too, because we're very much into this, like optimizing these sorts of conditions for training. You know, in the first part, you know, a big part of it's your hardware and your sensitivity and your system optimizations and all that stuff. But the rest of it is like yourself and how you approach it, and your recovery and all that sort of thing. So when I am like actually taking MG seriously, which I don't really do anymore, I take like more so the scrims and other sort of stuff much more seriously. It really is just about being as focused as you can and trying to just like really only be occupied with what you want to get good at.
Do you have any ideas on hitting scouts that like spam E and D?
As a scout?
Yep.
Well, it's not my forte, but I do think like the thing to do is to not like. It's kind of like playing sniper. You don't want to overly panic and throw your shot, which is really easy to do. Most of the time, it's not good to flick versus like very rapidly moving targets because it's easy to lose the shot. It's probably easier to kind of like either track and wait for them to enter the crosshair or do like a subtle adjustment, which is something I'm not particularly good at, but I know like all the best like scout v scouts, they do this sort of thing where they like if the enemy class is moving pretty erratically, they keep the crosshair close because that's going to minimize like the amount of work you have to do, and also minimize the movement distance of your crosshair, which is going to naturally lend to less time for the enemy to move. If your aim isn't the fastest.
What were you saying the other day about like trying to aim as quickly as possible?
Well, that's my philosophy. I call it hard aiming.
Yeah.
It's more applicable to soldier and projectile classes, but you can still do it on scout. The limiting factor with hard aiming is more scout v scout because it kind of lacks in the thing that I was just talking about, like the moving of it against erratic moving classes. But I really like so the idea of hard aiming. Excuse me one sec. Is basically it's not only just doing all the focusing stuff and really paying attention, but it's about trying to like optimize the efficiency of your aiming while increasing like the speed of it and stuff. So it like advocates for like reacting quickly, flicking really fast, not using like redundant movements. Like it's essentially like an A to B flick. Like I assume you've seen my kind of aiming style.
Yeah, sure.
That sort of thing. Like once I've got an idea of how the target's moving, I like try and read that as soon as possible, then flick as fast as possible and click as fast as possible.
So most of your shots on soldier would be flicks?
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do you
except if I'm air tracking someone with a shotgun, I prefer to track.
Yeah. Don't you use a pretty low sensitivity for soldier? Or not particularly low, but not
It's on my
fast either. Okay. Okay. Okay, sure. Okay.
I prefer lower sense because I do think you can kind of compensate for the potential lack of speed and potential lack of mobility just with like aiming faster, but I like the level of control it grants.
Okay.
Because you are simply just going to get more control with a lower sensitivity, but it can potentially, like theoretically, compromise your mobility, and by that I mean like your rotation and your air strafing and stuff, and also your aim. But I don't think it's not a coincidence that most of the CS:GO pros, they use like very low sensitivities, but they still move their mice pretty fucking quickly.
Yeah.
And so if your sensitivity is low to the point and your mouse movement speed is low to the point, as in like you moving the mouse, that can compromise you as a player in terms of rotation and strafing and aiming and all that sort of thing, but it shouldn't be a problem if you practice like moving faster, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Are there any particular other things that you think about that you think other players don't really, or is it just like mostly just?
Oh geez. Well, I'm sure there's not so much for scout v scout because that's not something I practice extensively. If that's what you mean.
No, I'm curious about like your soldier thoughts and stuff as well, or demo.
Are you talking just purely aim?
As opposed to...
Like, there's aiming, right? There's like the mechanical side of aiming, which is just purely just moving your mouse and trying to be as fast, as accurate as possible. And then there's like, you'd say that's a subset of like reading targets and how where you're going to shoot and how you're going to like position relative to them and all that sort of thing. So it's hard to answer your question because it's quite generalized.
Okay. Well, how about both of those? So like specifically the mass movement and then specifically reading targets.
What matchup?
I find scouts in general the hardest to hit.
As a soldier?
As every class. So.
Well, that's not terribly unexpected, right? And they're scouts. Yeah. That's what they excel at.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's just trivialities that you're probably going to be already familiar with. You want to like try and maximize your advantages versus them and minimize your disadvantages, especially as soldiers and other heavy classes. And that's going to be things like positioning relative to them, and them going to be occupied during fights. Like you don't want to take like a 1v1 versus scout, especially, and they have a sort of like a positional or territorial advantage or heal advantage, that sort of thing. Is that the sort of thing you want them in, or?
I guess just like. More curious about like reading movement, or is it just something you practice and you don't really talk about?
And there are movements that are kind of like more generalized, but unfortunately, like a lot of scout players move kind of differently. It's kind of hard for me to articulate how you might aim against them. I think really the best thing you can do is just play games and just like verse a lot of scouts, play a lot of MG, DM, and just try and like become accustomed to how they move. I kind of, whenever I miss a shot in DM, it's kind of like a subconscious thing at this point, or MGA, but I kind of like have this little thing in my head that says like, that was bad. I don't know if that's the way I should say it, but I kind of just make like a little note, a little negative reinforcement, and conversely I do this little positive reinforcements, which I think everyone does that like subconsciously, but I kind of like do it consciously because I guess my thought process would help improvement faster.
Okay.
But that ties in just to being like really probably just really focused on DM and stuff. Like we can play some Scout v Scout if you want right now.
I've been playing demo recently. My Scout v Scout's gonna be garbage.
Well, my Scout v Scout has always been rubbish, so if that's your concern.
Yeah.
Am I Oh, I'm lagging. It shouldn't matter.
Okay.
I do. Yeah. If you want to like get good at this sort of thing, the best players you can talk to, you know the MG nerds who are good at Scout v Scout. It's certainly not me. Although I do think there are like specific things you can probably do as a scout in a Scout v Scout sort of matchup to try and maximize your chances. Like, of course, you gotta dodge and you gotta hit, right? But it's not that complicated. But there are other little micro things I would say, like you can usually get your enemy. You can kind of usually get your enemy into a bad pattern a lot of the time in between their shots and movements.
Like, what do you mean by bad pattern?
It's hard to articulate.
Like a bad movement pattern, or?
Yeah, like once they miss a shot, usually that's like a window for you to like go into them with a more optimal scattergun shot. Like I think.
Okay.
Again, it's probably overcomplicating it because it really is just pressing A and D and clicking on the guy. But if you want to get into like the theory of Scout v Scout, you should be talking to like hold on. You really should just be talking to the Scout v Scout noobs. Nerds, pardon me. But the most important thing is like be really focused. Like don't compromise. Especially, I'd say it's the most important for this matchup because it's so bloody precise. Like you have to like hit close range shots, and you have to be like really hyper focused on your like your enemies because they move so fucking quickly relative to you.
Yep.
Like what I'm doing right now is not good. I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, which doesn't help. But in further practice, I'd be going into this and just really trying to like be intent about it. General good tip is to try and like, it's like sniper, you would probably want to linger your cursor closer to the enemy when you're about to shoot, that sort of thing, because that's going to minimize travel distance of your mouse. And more importantly, like if your mouse is has to move a shorter distance, that would mean it should reach there in a faster time, which should mean the enemy won't be able to move as much in that distance when you start, which should mean you increase the likelihood of your shot actually connecting.
Are you playing this next season?
Yes, I'm scouting.
Scouting? Okay.
I'm doing a...
Why did you switch from Soldier?
I wanted to try something new.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting. Like I liked Pocket Scout. Not because I was particularly good at the mechanics of it, because I'm not, but like I liked the level of influence it could exert over the game in ways that weren't entirely mechanical, which was kind of surprising because I've always kind of been a bit of a DM retard, I suppose. It was kind of fascinating to me, like how much leverage you could have over a game with just like communication and positioning with a class.
Yeah.
And just that sort of thing, and captaining.
Do you have any, I think this is probably my last question. Do you have any advice on, like, breaking out of low prem, I guess?
I'd say the thing that people probably worry the most about, if this is like your overall goal, right, to get out of low prem, is like concerning with the whole DM thing. Like, I really do think it is quite an overrated aspect of, like, you know, prem and stuff. The more important things really are like good communication and just good awareness, I suppose. DM is certainly important, right? Like it's a fucking FPS game. You got to shoot them. You got to shoot the bad guys. You got to kill the bad guys. But most players in like Prem, they have fine DM. Like yours is probably substantial enough, I would imagine. Like because all the other scouts that when I was playing in 27 and 28 and stuff, they had like way better DM than I did, but you can still compete with them.
Yeah.
But similarly, but the thing I'd say is if you want to like work on things, like the method I was just talking about before about like being really focused and playing and like practicing in the best conditions and resting in the best conditions, that's applicable to any sort of practice, not just DM. You can apply it to things just like when you're focusing in game, or perhaps I would say even more importantly is when you're communicating in game.
Yeah.
Like communication is by far like the most important thing. You got to like relay good information, and that means you want to do it really quickly. You want to do it concisely. You know, that sort of thing, and make sure people understand.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you're good at that sort of thing.
Right. Because I feel like a lot of the teams are just like kind of like circle jacks, or like that people mostly play with their friends.
That's absolutely true, especially as you go higher.
I'm not really friends with the people in like outside of low prem, I guess. So
yeah, it's a concern. No, it's like hard to break into these circles because they are really like established and hard to penetrate, I suppose. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just, I think that is quite the nature of it. Like if you wanted to like bust into a higher echelon of gaming, you kind of just have to like you have to just improve really substantially and play in like pugs and stuff and merc until people recognize you, and then maybe that could turn into things like I don't know, merking or subbing or getting invited to games and that sort of thing.
Sure. Okay.
You're right though, like what you said is apt. It's hard to get into that sort of shit. Especially if you don't have many top prem mates or like mid prem or whatever. because they are like pretty close-knit communities, I find, which I think is a bad thing. Like that's why I'm kind of glad about the outcome of this current season in Prem. Like that, I think it's good for the game that things potentially get shuffled up and stuff.
That Happy Feet lost?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Break the mold, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks for your time.
Yeah. Is that what you think's holding you back in getting into Prem as DM?
I feel like, honestly, I'm not just given a chance in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that like up and coming players, or players who, or actually any sort of player, like for them to play better, a big part of it is that they have to be able to be allowed to play in a better environment to showcase whether or not they're capable.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that if you were, in fact, it's probable if you were to play in like a better environment, like a higher level, that would help maybe maximize your capabilities and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also possible that you might just not be good enough. I wouldn't know. But the point is, if you want to get into a place where you can maybe try and shine a little higher, you have to like work yourself into just getting recognized and picked up, I think.
Okay.
And that just only comes with like hard work and dedication and luck and having good conditions, like your mechanics, but a big part of it is going to be like how innately capable you are, like with as your own potential, I think.
Okay.
It's just I think that's a harsh reality of life though for most things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay.
Well,
thanks, Rocky.
That's alright. Like, I haven't got time at the moment, but if you'd like to do like a fucking demo review or something, that might be helpful some other time.
Okay. Thanks for the offer.
That's alright.
Alright, I'll have a good rest of your day.
I intend to. Catch you around.